Welcome to the Restless Creatives podcast. Comfortable chats with inspirational creatives. Hosted by three self-confessed restless creatives, Lucy Hunter, Fiona Pickles and Bridget Girling. This week we chat with the incredibly thoughtful and all-round creative Jesse Quinn. He is best known perhaps as the bass player in globally famous rock band Keane. But over the last few years, alongside his music, Jesse, as a huge supporter of all the creative arts, has also developed an amazingly nurturing creative hub called Old Jet in his home county of Suffolk. He chose a good setting. It's so inspiring. The UK's most famous alien sightings were reported here 40 years ago. Jesse says they're still resident.
Hello.
Hello, Jesse.
Hello.
How are you?
So sorry I'm late.
Oh, don't worry. We can't see you. We can hear you beautifully, but we can't see you.
That's the original
Oh,
best.
there you are.
We do that a lot.
That's
What is
hilarious.
it about a
Right,
bloke though? He can just do that and it looks okay.
People got awesome backgrounds, like the most beautiful houses in the whole world. They're
What
like
have you got going
It's all
on there,
green
Jesse?
screen.
I'm just sitting in a little storeroom.
Looks like you've got a mattress up there.
I know, quick sleep.
Are you at Old Jet or are you at home?
I'm at Old Jet. I'm just in. I've got like a little. Well, I haven't got. There's a little room at the end of the corridor in the flight sim where you did the
Oh yeah.
stuff with Craig, Bridget, and it's a kind of little music room, writing room. It's absolute state because I'm changing the furniture in here, but there's like a piano and some speakers and that kind of thing.
I bet
An
that
American
space has
flag.
changed since I've seen it. Oh, hold on. Before we talk about that, let me just introduce you. I don't know where everybody is on screen, but Fiona for me is here,
Hello, Fiona.
and Lucy's for me is there.
Hello.
Hello. I've got you all in a little line along the top.
Oh, have you? That's very clever. How the devil have you done that?
God, I
How do
don't
you
have
do
to do a
that?
little line.
Can I
Don't
do a
ask
little
me.
line?
It's one of the view options. Oh, speaker in view.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Full
okay.
Screen. Hello. No,
Oh, hello.
Oh, you
I
probably
don't-
don't want to do full screen.
Maybe on half
that one a
screen.
miss.
screen.
Anyway, we're really delighted you're here with us today, Jesse.
Yes, thank you.
That's very sweet of you to ask me. I
Oh.
don't know what you're expecting to glean from me, but
We're expecting to have a lovely chat with you. In fact, why don't we start? Why don't you tell us all about you? Whatever
Okay.
you want to tell us.
well, I grew up in Suffolk,
Yes.
in the Shire. Grew up in Framlingham, and
See, he and I. There you go.
yeah,
Is that
Great.
together? Is that
Framlingham.
close? So I know this is a big county. So is
Yeah,
that?
yeah, but we
Close.
both grew up in Framlingham.
Wait a minute,
Oh,
Liz.
okay.
Where are you? Fiona and Lucy, where are you? Because if you're not local,
No, we're not
Oh,
local.
not
I'm
local.
in Yorkshire.
I'm
Oh,
in
nice.
North Wales.
good grief.
I know.
So might as well be in Hollywood and New York.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That'd be nice. What a
Except we're
vibe.
not.
It's so
We're in
cold.
our house.
It's too cold. I'm
Yeah.
so tired of the cold. I'm trying to think if there's any other relevant information. So, mum and dad, mum singer, dad sound engineer, and
Okay.
production manager. Musical family. Moved to Bristol after school and worked in a studio there in a pub, like a sort of weird music venue pub. Then moved to London, and then started playing music as a job. Eventually, after just assuming it would happen without me having to do anything, you actually have to put some effort in. So managed to secure myself a job as a musician in a sort of kind of folk outfit. Well, a female singer-songwriter. Female, I don't know why I said female, it's a weird thing to say. A singer-songwriter called Laura Marling, who's amazing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know.
And so played with her for a while, which was a bit of a baptism of fire because we went straight into doing some touring. and it was a really small band. There was only 4 of us, including Laura.
I feel I need to confess a
What? Go
shameful
on.
thing.
Tell me.
I don't know her.
You don't know Laura
well,
Marling? Oh, really?
She's absolutely awesome. She's
Yeah.
she's kind of like a young Joni Mitchell crossed with, I don't know. I mean, she's a little bit of all the folk greats. She's a bit of Dylan. She's a bit of Neil Young as well. And she is formidable as well. But she was really young when I was playing with her, and she didn't really know what I think she assumed my capabilities were far beyond what they were. So she'd say, okay, on this one, can you play banjo, accordion, piano, drum, and shaker?
Come on, all at the same time.
One-man band.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Well, I can do those 2 at the same time, but I can't do all 4. So I'd be this sort of like weird character at the side of the stage, kind of like hopping between everything. And then, so my next job was that I got asked to do was with Keane, and that was playing bass. And I was like, 4 strings, not having to pick up any other instruments. This is ideal. So it kind of went into being a different kind of baptism of fire, because I went from playing to sort of, a couple of hundred people to playing to sort of 20,000, and having a sort of roadie and,
Because you were a roadie for a bit, weren't you?
Yeah.
You roadie? Yeah.
Yeah, so
What actually is that?
Yeah,
Explain
what is a
what a
roadie?
roadie does.
Well, here's the thing: you can't call them roadies anymore.
Oh, why?
Because they're techs, and because I think partly because that world has become so complicated in recent years. In the 60s and 70s, you kind of had like a drum kit and a couple of guitar amps and not much else. And now you have sort of all kinds of computers talking to each other, and they're all really super skilled people, and they know all these sort of weird things that I know nothing about, like what an IP address is. So all they really do is set up and pack up the gear, and everyone has a different kind of job. So you have lighting designers and front of house sound, on stage sound, all these kind of different roles. And growing up in a family that had the art side and the practical side, I feel like I was sort of I was really lucky, because a lot of musicians and artists really don't understand the work that goes into that side of the show, and I think it can sometimes lead to them, can be one of many reasons why they might end up being awful. awful people. I heard a great story about Catherine Jenkins, where she said to her tour manager, she said, "What are all these lorries doing here? They're all exactly the same as the ones at all the other gigs." He said, "Yeah, it's got all of your equipment in it." "What equipment?"
I've just got my voice.
Realised that they took all of the lights, all of the speakers, everything that makes it a gig apart from the actual walls and ceiling and stage and floor, it goes with you. So it's like a traveling circus. I mean, Keane certainly is like a traveling circus, but so yeah, I've done quite a lot of that sort of work. Dad started me doing sound engineering stuff at quite a young age and helping him on jobs.
So did he tour as well? Is that what he did?
He didn't do a lot of touring, actually. He mainly did locally, sort of local stuff. And he was a cabinet maker and builder by trade. So he was a very sort of practical guy. And he got into it because someone said, "Can you build me some speakers?" And he sort of, being the kind of guy he was, he said, "Well, if I'm going to build some speakers, I'll
build
do it properly. I'll try and do some really good ones." And he got really interested in it and bought the amplifiers and all the stuff that you need if you've got speakers. And then kind of fell into that world and really, really liked it. And there is a sort of practical side to all of that technology that gets overlooked. All the physics of hanging a bunch of stuff in above an audience and stuff, which is you can imagine these days the health and safety side of
it's
it
huge.
is really intense.
Mm.
So, well, that's me really. And then we stopped doing Keane in 2013. We all needed a break from it. And I moved back to Suffolk, which I promised myself I'd never do. I was ready to move to New York. I was like, I'm going to go do something cool and fun, and then moved back to where I came from. And now I can't imagine living anywhere else. I absolutely love it.
There is something about our county. It just draws you back. So many people leave and come back.
It's weird. And do you know what? I've had a sort of sad realization lately that when I moved back, I was like, you know, we're the kind of young families coming back, you know, we're the youngsters. And just recently, I think because of COVID and everything, people have been moving out to the country. But I've suddenly seen all these, you know, kind of 30-year-olds with babies and pushchairs. And my kids are like 7 and 9. I was like, oh no, we're moving up to being the older ones already. It's so unfair.
You'll be middle-aged before you know it, Jessie.
Yeah.
I'm going to be 40 in 5 months.
God, 40? That's awful.
Says Lucy, the youngest of us three, which she does mention quite a lot.
Yeah, she does. Drops it into the conversation.
Yeah, still the other end of 40 though.
Well, as long as none of us act it, it's all right, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. Well said.
Yeah.
So tell us about Old Jet, because you came back to Suffolk and you wanted somewhere to presumably be your bolt hole, your base, your recording place.
Yeah.
And is that how Old Jet started?
Yeah. So I think I have the blessing and curse of basically always confidently following my nose in life and never really having any plans, but just getting on with things regardless. And, you know, like I say, that can be a blessing and it can be a curse. And I had a small studio in Wandsworth when we were down in London. And so I had some equipment. And when I came back up here, we packed Keane in for a while, and I was kind of thinking about what I wanted to do. I didn't know if I wanted to start doing some getting into record production or working with different people, but I knew I wanted to set this gear up that I had somewhere. And my dad's PA company was at Bentwaters, which is this old US Air Force base in you know, proper rural Suffolk.
Famous
And
for
he said,
aliens.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
What, real aliens?
Yeah,
The famous
real
Rendlesham
aliens.
incident. Those guys are still around. They're great fun.
Actually, it
aliens.
feels like it on Bentwaters, doesn't it? You can really believe that's true.
It is a super eerie place.
Yeah.
But really, what's sort of magical about it is it's got this kind of, you know, the Americans left here in '93, I think it was. And so it's been kind of, when they were here, everything was immaculate. You know, every blade of grass was exactly the same length and the same color green. And now it's got this slightly kind of dystopian thing going on, but in this beautiful English countryside. So, I mean, I absolutely love that. I've got no desire to be in a kind of on like an industrial estate or something with my creativity. You know, it works for some people, but I need a bit more help than that. Anyway, so the landlords, Dad introduced me to the landlords, and they showed me a couple of small buildings that would have been great for a studio. Just so you know, I always give the long answer.
Oh, it's like
this
me.
is what we want.
It's always the really long answer.
That's good.
And I sort of looked at these studios and I thought, oh, this is great. But, you know, having just come from London, I thought, I'm going to get so bored and lonely out here on my own. And, that, you know, I might go a bit mad. So I asked them if they had any bigger buildings that I could potentially take on and share with a couple of people. And they showed me this building that you're familiar with, Bridget, where you know, not the flight sim, but our kind of main building. And you've walked in through the front door and seen it that way. But when she showed it to me, we walked in from this end door, and the building was derelict, completely like being taken back by nature, and there were dead rats everywhere. And we walked through this end door, and I was a bit kind of like, you know, I like a challenge, but this is this is pretty intense. But we walked into this room and it had this kind of built-in stage. And I was like, wow, this is like a little venue, you know, you could have a gig in here. And we walked around the building and I just got this sort of feeling that I had to do something with it. I was meeting loads of interesting people, having convinced myself that I was moving to a cultural wasteland. I sort of all these people around that were amazing artists and musicians and photographers and stuff. I thought, oh, maybe I could just do this building up and rent it to a bunch of people, rent spaces to a bunch of people, and just see what happens. And I didn't have any money to do it.
How long ago was this?
This was 2013.
Okay.
Yeah, so I didn't have any money to do it. I knew I didn't want to have like one of those kind of arts places where you're constantly kind of going cap in hand to the Arts Council and stuff. So I thought, how can I make it a viable business? So I took on one of the hangars and rang around a bunch of, you know, roadies, techs and bands I knew and said, look, have you got any gear that needs storing? It's cheaper than London. You store it up with me. It's way cheaper than London.
Nobody will ever find it. It's in this windswept, strange place.
Never be nicked.
And there's aliens guarding it.
Just up the road, 2 hours up the road. And so I filled this warehouse with stuff that instantly became, you know, a small business and trickled money into me doing up this other building, which I started, like I said, I didn't have anything to do at the time. And we had a bit of money put aside for because we were renting, we wanted to buy a house. So we had basically a deposit put aside. And we kind of lived on that a little bit for a while. And I maxed out, I basically got Barclays to put my credit card up to like 10 grand and maxed that out on paint and skips. And,
wow, that's a lot of paint.
Yeah, and light bulbs. Honestly, these, you've never seen so many light bulbs in our building. And then I guess 6 or 7 months later, the first tenants moved in. First, Craig Girling, who
My brother-in-law
knows well.
Oh, okay.
He's a great photographer. 2 great photographers. And off we went. And somehow, by the grace of God, it's still going now, and we still have people wanting space. And
well, you have a waiting list, don't you?
we've got a massive waiting list.
Really? Wow.
It's awesome. And we've basically got 2 rules for people moving in here. It has to be arts and no dickheads.
Okay, so how do you define both those things?
Now you asked that, but I you know, this is what we need to do. We need to make it a place where people are really supportive of each other and engage with the community side of what we're trying to do, rather than it just being a workspace they go to. And I didn't want to kind of find myself early on when we were trying to fill the building. I didn't want to fill it suddenly with like a bunch of, no offense to them, but like accountants and, you know, whatever we could get in just to get the place filled up. I thought, well, if we're going to do it, we need to have this stick to the vision. And which I'm really glad we did. And I don't know about you, but I mean, it's gut instinct with people, isn't it? I meet everyone that moves in and I just see how I feel about them. And I'm quite good at noticing whether people are on their best behavior because they want space, or if someone comes along and they're a show off, we just don't give them a spot, you know. It's about being really supportive of creativity, because my kind of feeling on art and creativity is that it's the bottom line is that it's self-expression, and self-expression is a very fragile thing for a lot of people. Even to say, oh, I like that jumper more than that jumper can be a stretch for a lot of people. So it's been really important to me all along that we really try and make it a place where people can, you know, they can express themselves however they like with what they're doing in their art. And what's lovely is we've had people move in who just want to try something, and they felt nurtured and they felt supported. And, you know, like, it's really nice. I had a lovely conversation with someone the other day, and I think she'd sort of fallen into that trap of feeling like you have to explain your art and your creativity, which is a lie and a falsehood. You don't have to explain shit. It's playing, you know, it's exploring and it's fun. And like, you shouldn't have to kind of like say, oh, this is my response to the space or whatever. You can just say, here's a thing I did.
Yeah.
And, you know, taste is obviously a complicated element where art is concerned, but, you know, that bottom line, like I say, of self-expression is all that really matters, isn't it? You know,
It really is.
So how many people have you got there? How many other artists are there? How many?
There's about 30 of us.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's what's lovely again about the building. I mean, it's a very nondescript building. It's a sort of 2-story red brick old office thing. It's got this slight weird, subtle 60s American
It really
design,
does.
which I've grown really fond of. But if the building was any bigger, no one would know each other. If it was any smaller, it wouldn't have any energy. It just wouldn't be busy enough. So it's just at that perfect size where people develop friendships and, you know, interact socially as well as with work, and it's worked out great, really.
It is an extraordinary place, and it's one of those places where you walk in and you can feel the atmosphere. The atmosphere is nurturing, and you've deliberately created this. I sense in that, you know, you've got this communal space where there's sofas and a table to sit round and kitchen, and people go there. People want to be in there and have their lunch in there rather than in their studio or whatever. And you just hear people chatting, and they'll chat and they'll be there for ages chatting, and you can tell that there's an energy created and people are sparking off each other. And I
mean,
think
some of them are lazy.
yeah, obviously.
That's really nice to hear, though, because that is, you know, there's so many little things that I've done with the place that I thought almost make it more difficult, but actually in the big picture are quite good. You know, like in the kitchen, we only have one table. You know, it's a big enough room that we could have put a bunch of tables in, so there was always somewhere to sit. And I was like, you know, one big table, and, you know.
But it makes it feel like a family room, which is really clever. Whether that was deliberate or not, it's really clever, because you've got like your sitting room with the sofas, and then you've got this big table, and you just feel, well, that's where I'm going to sit with my bowl of soup I've just heated up or whatever. And then other people come and join you. You don't have to sit in isolation. There's somebody who's going to come in and have a chat with you.
There does seem to be this weird thing with arts places where they kind of go in one of two directions with their kind of presentation. One is they'll be kind of super messy, artsy, loads of stuff in the corridors and stuff, and I find those places really inspiring, and I love them. And I part of me wishes we had a bit more of that. And then the other side is the kind of like too much office furniture, you know, like a bit too busy or something. And all I wanted was for it to be homely, because I thought I like personally to separate and compartmentalize work and home. I don't like them to mix, for me. Physically, I guess I mean. I don't like working from home at all. I like to be able to sort of feel like I'm going to work. But having said that, you know, I made my home the way that I like it. So why would I not make my workspace the way that I like it? You know, why would I make it feel like a boring office? Mm-hmm. So that was from day one. You know, there was a poor few unsuspecting people who came to look around Old Jet when I was doing it up there on my own, like a maniac. And we didn't have any lights on. I had to sort of like walk around with a spotlight.
A candle.
And I sensed there were a lot of people, you know, and I'd have to meet people at the main gate, and I'd be in my kind of boiler suit, and I had a big beard at the time. And I do think there are probably a few people that are like, am I going to get out of here alive?
They're going to find me under the concrete.
But I'd show them round, and you kind of like, there'd be like a sign here saying no entry asbestos, and a dead rat over there and stuff. And weirdly, the take up wasn't great. So I thought I'll sort out the kitchen, because the kitchen's the heart of the home, and I'd like it to be the heart of this place. So I put down some nice flooring, painted it some super middle class Farrow and Ball colour, and kind of made it feel homely. And then and kind of did the corridors a bit. So then people came in and they were like, oh, I see what the feel is and the idea. And then we just did the rooms to order. So, we'd have to put down screed flooring and paint that. And there's a lot of ripping out old stuff to do. But
maybe that's another reason why it's been so successful, because you slowly allowed it to grow as people joined you to the point now you've got this huge waiting list. Yeah. I imagine you're still growing as well, because I know there are other buildings in and around there.
Honestly, my dream is to take on this other building that's kind of just opposite us. That's basically a single-story version of what we've got, and it's.
Is that the one with the holes in the roof and everything? Lots of green growing up.
No, not that one.
Not that one.
Directly opposite, there's a hangar.
Yes.
It's behind that, so we put a track around to it basically. But I'd love to take that on and have ceramics and sculpture and stuff like that going on, a bit more of the kind of messier end of the arts. You've got a lot of musicians and photographers and stuff in the main building, who are quite that's definitely the tidier end of the arts. But it's just the outlay. I don't have time to do the work myself now, and you're talking about, like, just to get the keys, do all the deposits and legal fees is like 15 grand, and then you've got to do up an 8,500 square foot building, rewire it, put a boiler in, all of this stuff. So I'm kind of chipping away at that in my mind. I had a really interesting conversation with someone a couple of years ago that, as creative people, you might be interested in yourselves, that was about why you make decisions and why you do things, and idea anchoring. Have you come across that before?
No.
Idea anchoring.
It's a really fascinating thing to keep at the back of your mind when you're making decisions. It's the basic concept is, if I show you a bunch of flowers and they all stick up like this and they're all yellow, and you've never seen a bunch of flowers before, your brain says, that's a bunch of flowers, tick. If I then come across you come across someone else and they show you a bunch of flowers that's all different colors and it's kind of a sphere, they're like, well, that isn't pointing up in yellow. It's not quite a bunch of flowers. I don't know if I like it. And that's a very simple example, but when you apply that to sort of bigger things and creativity, it can be really dangerous, and it can be a trap that you don't realize you've fallen into. An example I've had here recently is my recording studio. My idea anchor is the recording studios that you had in the 60s, where there's a big mixing desk and a window, and then a big room with a band playing in it, which is what everyone thinks of when they think of a recording studio.
That's what I visualise.
Yes.
And that's an idea anchor, and everyone would have it. But if you walked into my studio, you'd probably think, well, what madman works in here? Because I've laid it out how I want it to function and how I want to work in it. So it's kind of, the big room has got all of the mixing desk and all my keyboards and everything's kind of round in a big horseshoe shape, and it's completely kind of weird, and there's no big window at all. It's just a door through to a smaller room. So the reason I did that was because with that idea anchoring approach to the studio that I had before, it was slowing me down, because I was forever having to go through into another room or take one thing out and go and get another thing and set it up. So I threw that away, and I've tried to apply that a bit to Old Jet in general, and in my thinking about what workspace is, what is conducive to creativity, and also remembering that it's not just my taste. There's lots of people with different tastes wanting to use the space. And with regards to this other building and kind of expanding it, I guess I want to make sure that I'm doing it for the right reasons, and not that it's this kind of idea anchor of what an arts centre should be, because an arts centre can be whatever I want it to be. I'm in charge. So there's that side of it, and then also, of course, we're all hugely guilty, whether we admit it or not, of being somewhat obedient and subservient to our egos. And I had to ask myself, am I wanting to take that building on because I want Old Jet to be bigger and better, and be the best in the area? And yeah, of course I do. I mean, I'd be, lying if I didn't say I didn't want it to be great and everyone say this place is amazing. But when I dug deeper, I did realize that I think what it offers and what it, the ethos of the place has value, and it's more than just, about having somewhere to go and work. It's about the nurturing side and the community side and all of that stuff. And why not have more of that,
So how do you ensure that happens? I mean, I know obviously you said you have a gut feel about people, and if they're
well, I mean, I'm
not quite suitable, they don't get in.
Yeah.
I say chat.
But how do you encourage that nurturing and community?
I mean, there's loads of little things that we do, and some of them quite subtle. There's a lot of, I mean, I always get a buzz out of connecting people for a start anyway, saying, oh, it probably drives people mad, but I say, you've got to meet so-and-so, you'd love them. They do all this stuff and it would be right up the street. So I really enjoy that side of life, not just the arts and business, but, it's great when you see people connecting who will really get on. So I'm very proactive with that side of it. I'm conscious of not having too much of one thing here. So if we had all photographers, it could cause friction. And we do a lot of little things, like we have when you walk in the front door, there's a wall of Polaroids that has a picture of everyone on it and their name underneath it. So that awful thing when you're working in a building full of people and you think, I can't remember the name of that woman that I say hello to every single day.
And I can't ask her now because I've been speaking to her for 6 months.
I've been here for 15 years. So there's none of that, and people can, and we have a nice little WhatsApp group that isn't too much of a chore for people, I hope. And one of the things that people, the old expression, you can take the horse to water or whatever. One of the things that we've done in the past, which I feel has been absolutely brilliant, and people sort of didn't engage with as much as I'd like them to, is we used to have these social lunches. Bridget, you've been to a few of those. Yeah. And they were kind of we'd invite people and have a one pot wonder, like a curry or whatever, and people would talk. They'd sit down, eat simple food. I mean, this is
good
the
long tables and
it's the essence, and try and do it on one table if we can, unless there's loads of people. But it's the essence of community, and communion, and this eating together. And like you were saying, it's also a kind of, it's something you associate with family, I guess. And those lunches, I've lost count of the amount of times people have said afterwards, I met this amazing person, we're going to do this project together, we had a brilliant time. But then what was so infuriating was I'd organised these lunches, no one would tell me if they were coming or not. And so I'd sort of, the person, whoever was cooking, they'd say, well, how many people are coming? I said, well, only 4 people have said they're going to turn up. And then maybe 40 would turn up. But
it's a very small lunch.
Yeah, really frustrating. But I don't know about you guys, but there is something to be said for just sitting down and eating with people. There's something so much more real about it than than having like a meeting or whatever. You know, you associate agenda with meeting. There's two words that you put together, don't you? And the only agenda with sitting down to eat together is eating. And, you know, that's one of the most natural things you can do. So yeah.
And there's something about when you're eating, you don't have to look at somebody all the time. You don't have to look like you're concentrating all of the time. You can be really listening, and you can choose your moment to say something if you wish to. Whereas in a meeting, it's so much more formal. And I mean, I fortunately don't live a life where I really do meetings, but I imagine so much more stiff and staid and uncomfortable.
Yeah, and you're sort of thinking about your body language all the time, aren't you?
Yeah.
And Crumb's life's too short for worrying about your body language.
That used to be my life.
Did it? What do you mean? Tell me.
I used to work in corporate world. I used to work in printing, so I used to be a manager in an office. Worked in an office for years and years.
I just can't imagine you being happy in that scenario, Fiona.
No,
you didn't like it.
I actually did like it. I liked it. I liked. So it was within print. So the print itself was quite interesting. You know, there was sort of like creativity side, but it was getting more and more down the route of computers and those sort of things, and it was just getting more and more data driven, and that's what I didn't like, and that's when I just thought, no, I'm going to do something more creative, and left it behind. But no, I used to be in the corporate world for about, I think it was 18 years.
Some people love it.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I loved it. I didn't hate my job. You know, I wasn't one of those that went to work and thought, oh, I don't want to do that. But
you escaped and didn't go back.
Yeah. And those people probably would not recognize me now. You know, just a very different person.
Don't you hate it when you hear people say hump day?
Yes.
Oh, all the blooming cliches that you get.
I think to myself, do something you like.
Yes.
Life's so short, isn't it?
I think you're right. And also when you do your own thing, particularly in the creative world, every day's a work day. You know, it's just, you know, it doesn't matter which day of the week it is, it's a work day, whether that's being inspired on the dog walk or, you know, feeling like you just got to go and do something that is technically work because you can't resist it, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's amazing. But you also do stuff at the weekends at Old Jet, don't you? You have your markets and things. You do, and that's sort of very charitable orientated. You haven't touched on this, but you are very conscious of community beyond Old Jet and the music world that you're in, and supporting community and giving something back, aren't you?
I mean, I don't want to be like one of those awful people that talks about that. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
You've been asked about it.
Raised £100,000 for something awareness. I suppose all that I'll say about that is that I feel like it's a bit like dropping a pebble in a pond, and you know, if you can help, you know, say for example, we bought a load of new chairs for a local nursery, and all their chairs were broken, and it's a small amount of money. It's not a big deal, but they were chuffed to bits. And there's a little ripple from it, and there's a little feel-good thing that I think, you know, there's enough of those little pebbles dropping in the pond, and people doing bits and bobs like that. It does galvanize a community, and somehow sort of, you know, it sort of seeps in, and I think people feel it. So doing our monthly market is a kind of, it's a twofold thing. On the one hand, I mean, it's a terrible idea from a business perspective because it basically costs us money, you know. But on the one hand, it's great because it brings the community together. And I know tons of people who'd only see each other sort of once a month because they'd come to the market, and we'd sell all this have all these sellers selling vintage stuff and interesting bits and bobs. But we'd also have good coffee and cakes, and we always had this great friend of ours called Ben DJing, playing vinyl, and you know, try and make it feel like a little festival. I mean, it's a small thing, the market, it's tiny, but it does bring people together, and it has raised money. So all of the pitch fees we basically just put into a separate account, and and we divvy it out to things that we think are cool, or you know, where we see people that need stuff. But it's you know, it's a bit of a funny subject, really, because I feel like you can I don't know. I sort of think you should do that stuff in secret, and we always did, and then recently, well, I say recently, a year or so ago, someone said, you really must tell people about that side of the business, because people love to know that, and it inspires them to try and do stuff for their community. I'm still on the fence about that, but
well, I think I know what you mean. I think it's like when people ask you to give something to charity and you think, well, you don't know what I already do, because I do it privately, or I make my donations to causes that are important to me. And I only have a small pot and it can only go so far, and I've made my choice. And you should never feel like you have to explain that to anybody, I don't think. But I do think the person who said that to you about your the market, I think it's very valid, because if you didn't make it clear that what you collect goes towards charitable things in the community, people might just think that, well, that's just another exercise for bringing in money to Old Jet, which isn't the case at all. And in fact, I imagine the effort of pulling that all together every month, you know, that's not a simple thing to do, to the communication of making sure that people are coming and getting the information out there to potential people who can come. And it's,
well, even just setting it up is, you know, setting it up and packing it up is a day and a half. And booking all the stalls, there is a lot involved. And, you know, every penny that comes in from the market, we don't cover our costs and then whatever's left we put in the pot. Every penny that comes in goes in the pot. And our charitable contribution is paying Ellie to do the work and stuff. And there's been some really cool stuff that's come out of it. And also, like, it is really fun, the market. You know, if you can do something good and it be fun, that's all right. So
that's definitely a win-win, isn't it?
Did it carry on over COVID?
No, we stopped when we had to stop. And then rather than kind of starting up and stopping again, when I say we, Ellie, who works for me and is awesome, we had a chat about it and basically decided, let's not do anything at all unless it can be really fun.
Do it properly.
So, you know, like I'd sort of had this vision in my head of like the market with everyone in hazmat suits, and it just would be rubbish. It would be horrible. So,
gas masks.
We've got some old US Air Force gas masks kicking around you can borrow. So, you know, the event side of things, we've got no plans at all. I mean, we've only got one potential event that we're going to put on, which I think would be absolutely awesome, which is with the Royal Ballet's in-house pianist.
Oh wow!
And she is just like sensational on the piano. So we want to do an outdoor thing with her and another girl who does modular synthesis. I don't know if you know, like synthesizers, kind of weird keyboards. It's kind of all of those built into like one big thing, and it's completely unpredictable, and it's almost the absolute opposite end of the spectrum to kind of a classical pianist, where you're really, really governed by the piece that you're playing. And with modular synthesis, the equipment does the thinking for you almost, and you have to kind of keep up with it. It'd be quite cool to do that. I really hope you can do that. But yeah, like I say, I don't want to do anything at all until it can be fun, you know.
That's how I feel
So
about quite a lot of things.
Yes, we haven't done anything for a long time, have we? I was looking at the website, and I was looking at the residency side. How does that work? Is that a space that you can sort of like rent or have for a week or something?
Yeah, so we've got a room in the main building. I should mention we've got 5 buildings now. It has grown quite big, but the main building, that's the kind of heart of the place, there's a room in there which is, I think it's about 7 meters by 5 or 6 meters probably, and it's got blackout blinds on the curtains and on the door, and there's a sofa bed, and it's basically just a big open space. It's got white walls, it's got an easel and a desk and some lamps and sofa, the sofa bed, a stereo. It's got a little piano, and what we do is we just let people book in for a week. They can stay if they want to. There's a shower and stuff. Most people don't want to stay because it's hella creepy here at night.
Oh.
With the aliens.
With the aliens.
I've been there and it's quite late and it's quite creepy.
But I got weirdly used to it. I quite like it now. What's really cool is like you'll go out to leave late at night and you'll see just like amazing wildlife. You'll see herds of deer and all sorts of stuff going on. Because the site is 1,000 acres. It's a big. The whole Air Force Base is 1,000 acres. So yeah, the residency side, you have a week, basically free, and we don't ask anything, because I think there's this weird agenda with most artist residencies where at the end of your time you have to give a lesson, a class, or you have to donate a piece of work, or whatever. And I just think, you're instantly attaching a kind of a weight to it that's utterly unnecessary. And if you've got the space and can do it, then why not? It's cool, and you meet interesting people, and it's all, again, just part of your kind of bigger, wider artistic community. And then, so what we do so that we're not completely shooting ourselves in the foot financially is we then just charge a small amount if people want to do more than a week, just so that it's not kind of permanently being used for free. And we'll sort of limit each residency to 2 or 3 weeks. But it's something that's in its infancy, but it's really, we've got probably 5 or 6 booked in at the moment. The diary got completely wiped out residency wise, obviously, because of COVID, and that's just starting to get going again. But they're cool. I like them.
Yeah, no, it looks really interesting. It's like, because often we're looking for sort of spaces, and it just sort of resonated from that point of view. It sort of felt, you start thinking, oh, is that the sort of place that we could do something? I mean, I don't know if it is, but because we're always very, we'd use a lot of water, so
it would have to be at the messy end.
The floor we would definitely be the messy end.
Yeah, Jessie's seen me arriving, leaving leaves in the corridor. And
I'll never forget, we had one of the things that Bridget was working on we've got this building called the Flight Simulator, which is an old flight simulator training building. Oh, wow. And the main room in it is 50 feet by 50 feet by 35 feet. So it's almost like a big cube, isn't it?
It is. It's
massive. Yeah, it's a wicked room. But you came in and made this beach scene. Do you remember?
Yes, I remember.
There's this huge room, and when you'd cleared up and gone, all that was left was this, like, a few tons of sand in a heap.
You didn't clear up very well then, Bridge.
Well, I haven't got very big muscles.
But what was really funny was one of the guys at Old Jet he's a writer, and he was writing this book where he basically travelled around the UK visiting like cemeteries and graveyards.
Oh, this is Jack, isn't it?
Jack Cook, and it's an absolutely brilliant book.
Hasn't his book just come out?
Yeah, check it out. It's called The End of the Road. It is so good. But to do it, he bought this like giant old 70s Jaguar hearse, and we needed to park it somewhere, so we put it in the flight simulator. And I was showing these people around, and so I showed them this building, and we walked into the room, and all that was in there was this massive old hearse and like a huge pile of sand. And they were, they were already like, it's a weird sight, but they were a bit
freaked out.
What the hell's going on in here? What kind of art do you call it? But,
imaginative.
Exactly.
I'm sure you could spin something out of it, but it's a great building, that it's a brilliant space.
But even over the year that we were working in there, that really changed over time, didn't it? I mean, I don't know whether you probably realise how much you're chipping away constantly. Well, you must do at Old Jet. There's something new around the corner all the time.
Yeah. I've got two things to say about that, if you're interested.
Yes.
One is slow and steady gets you there. I don't think you have to rush these things. And sometimes people will come back and they say, have you done such and such? And I'll think, well, I've been talking about it for 5 years, but the time hasn't been right, so I don't care. And then there's other things that happen overnight. And I believe that's a good thing to keep at the back of your mind in life, just like you don't have to rush everything. And the other thing that I feel really strongly about having set the place up is that it's really important to like notice as you pass goals. You know what I mean? So you can think like one of my original goals at Old Jet would be get the kitchen done. And by the time it's done and you put that last sort of piece of furniture in, you're so busy thinking get that room done that you don't even notice it. And you live your whole life never realizing how awesome you are. You know what I mean? It's terrible. We're always thinking about the next thing. So although I totally get what you mean, I don't notice things changing, but every so often I'll sort of reflect on where it's at and tell myself off for sort of thinking, oh, but I want it to be here and I wish we'd done this. And I'll give myself a little reminder that we've done a lot and people like the place. It's good. It
sounds amazing.
It
does
is
sound amazing.
Right, girls, when you
Really
next come here, we're
Yeah.
going to go and see Jessie and you can go and see this awesome place.
Excellent.
Love to see it.
Is the hearse
I
still
want to
there?
see
in the
that.
sand?
I want to see the hanger that's got the green stuff growing up through it as well.
Yeah.
That sounds beautiful.
I know, I did do quite a big inspection of that, but let's just say it's possibly not safe.
Okay.
quite a building that.
Yeah. So Jessie, you're going to be touring again soon, aren't you?
So people keep asking me about that.
No.
It's very enthusiastic.
What I've done is I basically sent an email to our manager and said, or a management company, and I said, here are the dates this year that I can't do anything. Like whatever, do whatever you like with the rest of it. So it's because it's changed so many times now that I've just stopped checking.
Oh,
I
you are
checked
going
today.
on tour then?
I checked today, and you're starting on the 1st of July. Did you know that?
I didn't know that. I haven't.
Where, Bridge?
Oh, now that I didn't write down, but I thought Jessie might know. I didn't think I needed to write that piece of information.
Will they happen? Because we've had loads of those that have been booked in, and then they've changed them, and so I just sort of wait until they say, right, you need to be here on this date. But that does fill me slightly with dread because I picked up my bass the other day and couldn't even remember which way round it went.
Strings on the outside, I think.
Go and use the pick bass.
Let's go back to the shaker. It'll be fun.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, but you can play a lot of instruments, can't you? You can turn your hand to most of them.
Back to the one-man band.
Yeah.
Well, here's another thing. Here's another one of my many irritating thoughts that I have about things. Is sometimes the things that you think about yourself that you think are a weakness are actually your greatest strength. And I've always thought I'm a jack of all trades, master of none. But that's pretty cool, I think. Like I can play a bunch of instruments, and maybe I'm not a virtuoso on any of them, but I can hold my head up and say, yeah, I could join in, on stage in front of a big audience on, I don't know, at least 4 or 5 instruments.
That's quite impressive.
Yeah,
And you
it
can
is.
sing.
Oh well, it's a work in progress. Me agreeing with you on that.
Oh dear. Yeah, well, I was watching a video this morning of you, Mount Desolation.
Oh yeah, so we're doing some writing for another Mount Desolation album at the moment. It's going quite well. That's a great. So that band started off. We were on tour in around Europe, and we were in Dublin, and we were staying in this amazing hotel with a kind of like peat fire and all this stuff. it got really late, and me and Tim from Keane were up with our manager Adam drinking Guinness, and we said, oh, wouldn't it be fun, because Keane is a machine with a lot of money involved and a lot of people involved, and it has to work really well. We sort of said, oh, wouldn't it be great just to record an album in a day and call it like My Dog Has Fleas, and it just be like a hoedown record. So we said, oh, let's do it, and then we both wrote a few songs for this kind of hoedown record that actually were really good. And we were like, oh, maybe we should take it a bit more seriously. But a big part of that original spirit remained, and we recorded a lot of it live. We just got a bunch of friends together for it, and I love that first album we did. It's really special. It's got a lot of emotion in it, even kind of sort of almost accidentally, because it was a bit like, in the tradition of country music, it was a storytelling album. So you're kind of writing about a lot of it's fiction, but you in doing that, you also obviously impart your own kind of experience into things. So yeah, we're doing another one of those. We did another one in 2018, which was fun, but yeah.
You seem to be very good at finding avenues for your own creativity. You're not just satisfied with one place, one area. It seems like you have a need to enmesh yourself into all sorts of different creative avenues.
He's a restless creative.
He is a restless creative. Exactly. He's our person.
It's very easy, I think, especially for creative people, to think that is what your teachers called at school not concentrating.
Yes.
Lack of focus.
Not focus. They didn't spend so much time looking out the window. So the first time a teacher said that about one of my kids, am I allowed to swear on here?
Yes.
Yeah.
My wife said, well, they shouldn't be such a fucking boring teacher.
It's so true, isn't it? I mean, it's
true,
just...
So the other day, I've been doing this Artist's Way course. I don't know if any of you have done that, which has been really fascinating. And one of the things in it was looking at kind of your sort of formative years as a creative person, and trying to get my head around that. I called my mum and said, have you still got my school reports? And she dug them out from somewhere, and I read them all, and I felt like crying. I mean, it was horrible, absolutely horrible. Even music, there was one that made me, they basically all said, he's obviously an intelligent child but just doesn't try, he's disruptive, and one of them cracked me up. It said exam result 96%. Admittedly, his exam result is very good, but but he's still disruptive and could do better. I was like, good grief. Well, I felt really affected by it, and I thought, oh my goodness, what impact has this had on me as an adult making art? And so I put it on Instagram, and I've got a real love-hate relationship with Instagram. But the side of it that I do like is any sense of actual vulnerability or sharing of experience, like kind of real experience. And I said, this is kind of funny, but I found it quite emotional. And I could not believe the number of messages I got from people saying all of my report cards are exactly the same. And you're talking about people that are really successful in all kinds of fields, and and even people that, I don't know, just have fallen into a job and plodded along with it or whatever. And it made me feel a lot better. But I also thought, like, what the hell? This is not how we should be bringing up kids.
Absolutely.
Especially because creativity and daydreaming is innate. It's what you do when you're a kid, isn't it?
I think
anyway,
it's fundamental.
I have about that, so.
Yeah, well, no, we've talked about that ourselves, haven't we? Quite a lot. Right, Jessie, I'm conscious of the time, and we do this thing towards the end of the TRC5. Check us out. So they're quickfire questions, but you don't have to answer them quickly if you don't want to. You're allowed to expand.
Bridget. You should know that after however long it's been, 45 minutes.
But this first question I wanted to ask you, I was going to ask you another question, but so I want to tell you why I'm asking it rather than it being a quick fire, because I know that despite the fact that you said you didn't really want to talk about charity too much, I know you did the War Child thing with Old Jet just recently, and I know you've got a history with them as well, haven't you?
Yep.
And you did a triathlon-ish kind of thing for War Child, raising money.
Yeah.
So my first question is, run, walk, or cycle?
Well, it depends on the context. I mean, I don't want to go into another rambling.
Which of the three do you prefer?
What I've learned recently about running, I got quite into running, and I got into that terrible thing of just sort of constantly chasing a new personal best. And I went for a run with a friend of mine who's a bit older than me, and he said, "Oh, can we walk for a bit?" And I was like, "God, what are you talking about?" You know. And we walked, and we were up around Sutton Hoo, which is, I don't know if you've seen
the film.
Yeah, the film. Yeah.
big, but we were up round there, and it was early morning, and I was like, "This is super nice. Why would I not stop when I'm on a run and like see the surroundings?" So I don't know. We all put too much pressure on ourselves, don't we?
So your answer?
My answer is run.
Oh, it is run. I thought you were going to say walk.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, right. Next question. Singing or bass?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I find it's funny how, I'm not going to start rambling, I promise, but singing.
We like rambling.
No, we do like rambling.
I find a lot of the things that we are passionate about in life are the things that bring us the least joy. But we just have this built-in kind of desire. And I feel a bit like that with singing. I hate the sound of my voice. I hate recording, and listening back to it makes me feel sick. But I just have to do it. Whereas with bass, I feel like it's a bit of a kind of, I don't feel any huge passion about the bass. So I can just enjoy it for what it is. And it's a hugely satisfying instrument to play through a massive PA, as you can imagine. So I don't know how to answer that one. If I had to give up one, I would give up bass. So
okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's really fascinating.
Singing it is then.
Yeah.
Whether it's the shower or in front of thousands of people.
Hundreds of thousands.
Right, next question. Can you draw?
I am going to say yes, because I think everyone can draw. But could I draw a beautiful picture of you? No, I would make you look like you were made of, I don't know, a lump of clay or something.
Well, that's pretty much reality.
I can't draw technically. I couldn't draw a beautiful portrait of anyone. But I do like drawing, and I feel like sometimes another creative trap we fall into is thinking of ourselves as only being our creativity applying to a specific sense. So for a lot of years I thought, oh, my creativity is oral, it's about music and it's about hearing sounds. I'm not a visually creative person, but obviously that's absolute nonsense.
It's interesting because our very first guest we interviewed, Rose Davey, she's an artist, and we asked her about a specific, it was, I guess you'd call it an installation, which she sort of came to, where she makes these, on the face of it they look very simple, but it's all about colour and about framing things. And her mum had, as a throwaway comment, like mums do, said, "Oh, it looks a bit like a cheese board." And she thought, right, well, I'm going to take that comment and go with it. And she actually put cheese onto these paintings and then let her guests come and actually start diving in with a knife and eating the cheese. And she said it was just incredible to see it in a completely different way, and to see people hovering thinking, can I eat the cheese? Is the cheese for us to have, or are we supposed to look at the cheese?
Like, you put it there, you're lost.
It's
She said to start with that people were sort of like looking at it, standing back and looking at it like it was a piece of art.
Yes.
And then she said, didn't she say that she said you can eat now? And she said it was like just leashing everybody, and they all just charged in.
It's really interesting how people consume art of all sorts, and you know, and how they feel they should react to things.
And I think your comment about everybody can create something artistically is absolutely true. And I just think we have a tendency to knock that out of children at a very early age when they're open to everything.
Well, also we make everything so bloody goal-based. I mean, it's so sad. I mean, I thought that I'd reached an age where no great loves would appear, you know, in my life. I knew what I was into. And a few years ago, it was a really hot sunny day, and I was walking along the river in the town I live in Woodbridge, and I thought, I'm bloody going in that river. It looks lovely, and I just jumped in. And
I know what's coming.
Yeah, but it's tidal, so it's salt water, so you can kind of float. And I thought, this is amazing. So I went back, and there was a bunch of people that went swimming every day, and there was one lady who was like 94 or something, and so I went in there every day for this summer, and I thought, oh, I love this. But then I hijacked myself by creating this ridiculous goal. I was like, right, I'm going to get a wetsuit, and I'm going to learn how to do really good front crawl, and I'm going to do all of this stuff, because you're raised in our education system for everything to be goal-based or competitive. And then I stopped myself and I said, what is it that I actually really like about the swimming? And what it is that I love is to just swim out to the nearest boat and lie on my back and float and look at the sky. And it is the nearest that I ever come to absolute just kind of peace and happiness in life. And I was instantly trying to hijack it. It's extraordinary. So I think you've got to be really careful with so many elements of your life that you don't suddenly attach all these goals to it. Like, oh, if I'm going to draw and I've just drawn a sort of blob, I should give up because it's not, you know, this incredible photographic image of someone, you know. Be warned, children.
Very, very true. Right, fourth question. Recent book.
These aren't very quick fire.
What's the most recent book you've read, if you read?
Well, like I said, I've been reading this book, The Artist's Way, which has been absolutely fascinating, and I recommend it to anyone who does anything creative. But it's a commitment. It's a 12-week course. So that's been fascinating and changed my life, really. And then I've been reading, sort of alongside of that, I've been reading some Flannery O'Connor. I don't know if you've ever come across Flannery O'Connor. She's an amazing American author. But she only really wrote short stories, but they are hella good. I think it was 50s or 60s. So yeah, I've been reading that. Love it.
We put links up on our website to everything you mentioned as well, so people can go and have a look. Now, here's the clincher, number 5. What's the most dangerous thing you've ever done, Jesse?
Loads of dangerous things when I was a kid that my mum's always telling me about.
We want to hear them all.
A lady that worked opposite my parents' house knocked on the door one day and said, look, I don't want you to panic, but your child's on the roof. And I'm sitting completely naked on the pitch roof with one leg either side, aged like 4.
Oh, 4?
Yeah. And my dad had left a ladder somewhere, and there's like a flat bit, and I just got up there, and my dad's like, he thought it was hilarious. Yeah, I'd probably say that was one of the more dangerous things I've done in my life. I ride a motorbike, which every time I get on that, I feel slightly like I'm going to kill myself, but I dawdle along on it, so it's not too bad.
I'm now dying to know how on earth your mum got you down from that roof without panicking everybody in the process.
We had the same thing. We went round to someone's for a barbecue when my son was 2. I mean, yeah, he was 2. So he was walking around and he was doing stuff. But they'd had like a single story kind of outbuilding in their house. So it had a ladder leaning up against it, but it was like that. So the top of the ladder went way above the building. And someone said, I don't want you to panic, but your son's at the top of that ladder. And we looked down, and he climbed all the way to the top of this ladder. He must have been like 25 feet in the air,
Oh,
in just
goodness.
mid-air. And I
It's
thought,
obviously something hereditary.
yeah, maybe. So anyway, it's
He came down.
wow. Good to do dangerous things once in a while, otherwise you get boring.
As long as you survive.
Well, Jessie, we must let you go because we've taken up a lot of your time, but you have been awesome.
Yes, thank you.
so
I've
much.
taken
It's
up
been
a lot of your
amazing.
time, but yeah.
No, you've been fabulous.
No,
guest.
it's fascinating.
Thank you so much.
I'm
And
very flattered and honoured to have been asked, so thank you very much.
well, you were an obvious choice, but particularly because of your support of the creative world. I just think that's I think having the position to do that is a really awesome thing. It's a lonely thing being creative on your own, and then very often you are on your own. So
Well,
Love
we
to
need
come and see you at Old Jet, all of us.
Yeah.
You're always welcome. Kettle's always hot.
we'll be there.
That's all we need.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, I'll see you again soon.
Yeah, hopefully see you very soon.
Take care. Bye.
You've been listening to the Restless Creatives podcast. To ensure you don't miss our next episode, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, the Restless Creatives podcast. If you'd prefer to listen rather than watch us, you can catch us on one of your favoured podcast providers. For more sneak peeks and behind the scenes fun, visit our Instagram at the.restlesscreatives or visit our website therestlesscreatives.co.uk.